One thing I love about this book is that it's practical, it's scientific, it's thoughtful, it helps us come back to our essence. It's also simple in the sense that it kind of kindly nudges us and reminds us to go back to what we already know, but that we keep neglecting. And there's this one study that you quote in the book, and you say, in a 2000 survey, millennials were asked about their most important life goals. 76% said that becoming rich was their number one goal. 50% said a major goal was to become famous. Now that's in 2007, and I think if that study was done now, those things would still hold true to a greater degree. And then you say, more than a decade later, after millennials spent more time as adults, similar questions were asked again in a pair of surveys. Fame was now lower on the list, but the top goals included things like making money, having a successful career, and becoming debt-free. How do we, when we talk about the good life, which is such a elusive topic for so long, you know, I feel like we've been studying the good life through culture, through spirituality, through philosophy for thousands of years. But the amount of advancement we've made in that pursuit is very little compared to going to the moon or going to space or even healthcare for that matter. I think even healthcare from a physical health perspective has had so much acceleration, but our understanding of the mind and the heart still seems to be fairly limited. And when you see those goals, you see, okay, that's what people are aspiring for. What is someone who's living the good life aspiring for? Because I think we often think of a good life as these habits, but what is a good aspiration? If the aspiration is not money, not fame, not a successful career.
Well, the aspiration can be different for different people. So they've done research on this, and they have these different types of well-being. There's one called hedonic well-being, which is what we all think of as just enjoying a good party, a good meal, having a good conversation. I'm really enjoying this conversation right now. I'm having hedonic well-being, right? But other people, well, all of us to some extent, want also a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. It's called eudemonic well-being. The best example is you have a small child who you read to at night before bed, and you're reading the book Goodnight Moon, and your child wants you to read that book for the 8th time, and you are exhausted, right? Is it fun? No. But is it the most meaningful thing you could imagine doing? Absolutely. And so this sense of I'm doing this because I love it, because I'm on purpose, because I care deeply about what I'm doing, that's a different kind of well-being. And then there's a third kind that they've begun to identify, which is a psychologically rich life. So many of us value just having interesting experiences, going to new places, doing things we've never done before. So those three things, having a good time now, feeling like I'm doing meaningful activity, and feeling like I'm having interesting experiences, those are all flavors of happiness.
Right.
And I think that each of us is a mix of all three, but some of us really want one more than the others.
Is it meant to be balanced, or is it that, is there a hierarchy of needs there, or what have we learned about those two areas?
Well, there's no right or wrong way, but what we know, and I think we know this from spiritual traditions more than my science, that when we do invest in things outside of the self, we are happier. And we're happier for longer, and we feel more of a sense that life is worth living. So I would say that we need to be sure we have some of that so we don't end up looking back and saying, gosh, I wasted my life.
I feel like one of the most difficult things for a lot of people today is self-awareness. In being aware of what we think is good for us, what we think is right for us. I even had a friend say to me yesterday, they said to me, yeah, I think I'm actually going to say no to that opportunity now, because I realized I was only going to say yes because of what people thought. And so you see that a lot, where so many of our choices and our decisions are based on what other people think is good for us or what other people think is right for us. I remember growing up and only wanting to aspire for things that other people rewarded. So if the most celebrated and respected person in my community growing up was an actuary for a career, I wanted to be an actuary at 10 years old. But if you asked me what an actuary did, I had zero idea.
Exactly.
And I think that this idea perpetuates. So what can we do to get closer to knowing what is good for us so that we can truly live a good life?
Yes. Well, and I just want to emphasize what you said, because when we asked our original participants in our study, hundreds of them, we said, when you're 80 years old now, when you look back on your life, what do you regret the most? More than anything, many of them said, I wish I hadn't spent so much time worrying about what other people thought. And that's just what you're naming. So then the question is, well, what could we do to change that? And I think what I've learned more and more in my own life is simply to check in more with myself about what are the things that raise my energy when I engage in them, and what are the things that lower my energy. So maybe like doing actuarial work might lower your energy.
Can you
You might say,
imagine?
oh, I don't like this,
Yeah,
right?
oh my God.
So, and some people actually embark on courses of study and then realize, how did I get here? I don't like this. And so I think one of the things we can do every day is simply to pay attention to that internal sense of being enlivened or being depleted by activities that we're doing during our day, and really pay attention to that. And when you can, turn toward the activities that are enlivening.
Yeah, I often say to people, it's like reflecting after you go to a restaurant. So what do you do when you leave a restaurant? You talk about the food, you talk about the ambiance, you talk about the service, and you're like, oh, I really like that dish, but I didn't love that one. And oh, the waiter was so wonderful, he was so helpful. And oh, I really like the design and the aesthetic of that space, right? So you talk about it. When you order in, you do the same thing. When you go to watch a movie or a TV show, we do the same thing. We go, oh yeah, that actor's performance was amazing, or that actress was incredible, or that scene, that was brilliant. Like, we analyze things, but I find that we don't analyze our lives in the same way. Like, when you go to a sports game, you could spend the whole day talking about it. Or if something happens to another couple in the media, or if something happens to a famous person in the media, we will analyze it for days and weeks and months. But when it comes to our own lives, we rarely pay that attention.